Hello and welcome to Birth as We Know It. I am your podcast host, Kiona Nessenbaum. I have experienced birth as a doula, a student midwife, and as a mother of 3 amazing children with my husband and high school sweetheart by my side. After attending over 130 births, including my own, I've realized that each birth experience is truly unique. So make sure you subscribe and join me every week as we are guided through many different birth experiences through the lens of the storyteller. Please be aware that some of the stories can be triggering to hear, so feel free to pause, take a breath, and come back and listen whenever you're ready. With that said, let's prep ourselves to dive deep and get detailed about what really happens in the birth space. As a reminder, this podcast is intended for educational purposes only and has no intention of giving or replacing any medical advice. All advice that is given on the podcast is from the personal experiences of the storytellers. All medical or health-related questions should be directed to your licensed provider. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Birth as We Know It podcast. And if this is your first time listening, welcome. Today, I am super excited to be interviewing a friend of mine that is a student midwife. I was actually working with her at the birth center when she was a student, and I was front admin, and her name is Jadrienne. Welcome, Jadrienne.
Hi, good to be here.
Thanks. So let's just go ahead and dive right in and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Jadrienne, Adrienne with a J, but everyone calls me Jade. But you can call
Nice.
me Jadrienne, it's totally cool. I like my first name. I am born and raised on the island of Guam in the Pacific and came out to Washington State when I turned 18 and married my high school sweetheart, which is the reason why I came out to Washington State in the first place. And going through schooling, going through a whole bunch of retail jobs, I decided that I wanted to pursue my teenage dream of being a midwife. And so I found Bastyr in my first year of my associate's degree, and I literally tailored my entire program to try to get into Bastyr.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And it took it took a long time. It took I want to say an extra 3 years, and my science classes were about to expire, and I was like, what the heck? Just apply. If you don't get in, then you weren't meant to be. And I applied and I got in, and mind blown. I'm like, okay, you ready for the next 3 years? Just committed.
Right. Yeah. Because, going to school as a midwife is a lot different than just going to a brick and mortar school. Because we have, that online schedule. So, or not
Yes.
online, but that on call schedule. It is definitely puts you through the ringer.
Yeah, I definitely felt tested.
Yes.
Yeah, so being in school, I'm married. I've been with my husband for 18 years now. We were little teeny boppers when we met.
That's beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful.
you. Biggest support, because in this program, if I did not have him, it would be very difficult, like financially, because you can't. I mean, you can, but it's almost impossible to work even a part-time job with an on-call schedule.
Yeah, because the amount of time that you have to be on call is insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. But it really does it gives you a realistic idea of what it means to be a midwife, because babies come when they want to come.
Oh, so true.
Yeah, very, very much. So what inspired you to be in the birth field?
My goddaughter. So I come from a big family. Like my mom had 14 brothers and sisters. My dad had 10 brothers and sisters, and just really big family. My mom was like the family doula without the actual role. And seeing her support my family members. My sister got pregnant and she was 19, and she didn't have her the father of her baby in her life or through her pregnancy. And
Mm.
so I was 15 years old and I was going
Mhm.
with my sister to Lamaze class.
Mm.
And I actually skipped school that day when she went into labor. And I went to her birth, and I was the one that was right front and center giving her support. She had like, I want to say almost 16 hours of labor, and
Mm.
I was so blown away. It was my first time seeing birth, and I got to cut the umbilical cord. My goddaughter was a Valentine's baby.
Oh, sweet.
When I found out that the person that delivered my goddaughter was a midwife, I was blown away.
Mm.
I couldn't believe that, you know, you just think a doctor, like Western medicine, just took over the world. And
Mhm.
so when I found that out, I'm like, I want to be that. Like
Mm.
it was magical.
Yeah.
Going back to it, like throughout school and just throughout like and a everyday adulting, I kind
Mhm.
of went back and forth, but eventually I just got led back to birth, and I'm like, I'll hate myself if I don't try it.
Mm.
And here I am.
Yeah, and here you are on call actually too. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the that just shows that there's times when things are scheduled and babies still come. Babies
Oh my
still
gosh.
happen. And I really, really love how you watching your goddaughter slash niece be born was your inspiration, because it started off with love.
Hmm.
And I feel like the fact that your inspiration started off with love is what got you into the birth field that will continue to spread throughout how you care for individuals as a midwife. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
think
no,
that's great.
I agree. It
Yeah.
was a little mortifying because I didn't like no one told me what birth looks like, and I
Mm-hmm.
saw the full works, but that did not scare me off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at 15.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with my little Sony digital camera.
Yes, that is awesome. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about your schooling. So right now, how far along are you in school?
I'm in my second year of the program. It's a 3-year program. I'm finishing up my spring quarter, and
Mm-hmm.
so by the end of this quarter, I'll be doing my practicum throughout the summer, where I'm just in clinic, going to birth, getting all of my credentials that I need to graduate,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have one more year, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll be eligible to apply for licensure.
That's awesome. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
So, with ending your second year, how many births have
Mhm.
you been to so far in these 2 years?
I want to say about I'm still filling out my Typhon,
Mm-hmm.
that my tracker. But I'm at like 31 births right now, I believe.
Wow, 31 births.
Yes, and I just had my four-handed catch. Oh my gosh, it was mind blowing. It
Oh,
was,
nice.
yes, it was so memorable. So at my site, I'm the junior student, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a senior student who is doing all of the primary skills. Like they're the ones at the birth that are catching the babies with the midwives, kind of guiding them right there. And
Mm-hmm.
I was doing more of the birth assisting
Mm-hmm.
as I was transitioning out of my current preceptor or my practicum site. Um, I was actually on Monday, there was two births at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So our birth team had to divide and conquer.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to a home birth, and as the baby's head was coming out, my midwife just was like, all right, put your hands right here and you're going to catch this baby. And it
Mm.
was, I wasn't expecting it. And it just was so like, it was meant to be. Yeah, baby came out beautiful, vigorous, um, pink, lots of vernix.
Mm. Gotta
But
love that vernix.
oh yeah, but once I put that baby on the like their mom's belly, I just like my heart just sunk in to see that. It was so beautiful. Getting goosebumps.
Mm. Yeah, gosh, just thinking about those moments as a student, they're so, you know, some people think that if you see birth so often, it starts to kind of like not be as shocking or as surprising or as beautiful, but every single
Yeah.
birth that you see is so different. It's
Yes.
so different every single time. And so for you to have that moment of touching that baby's head and helping bring that baby to mom's belly, ugh, I just
Hmm.
remember, yeah.
It was very unreal, and I will say a lot of people do say that like birth. Honestly, lots of midwives right now are being burnt out, and like in the Tacoma
Mm-hmm.
area where I'm from,
Mm-hmm.
there have been a couple of midwives that had left just because of this the burnout and the sustainability um, for being a midwife. But
Mm-hmm.
every birth that I go to has a different sort of magic. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to explain it. It's like a different kind of high.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it. It's oxytocin is what it
Yeah.
is. It's that oxytocin that just runs through the room and like, just melts around the space. It's so interesting. And, also the adrenaline because there's lots of things that happen in a very small amount of time with birth. So,
Hmm.
of course, there's the entire laboring aspect of like the getting through contractions,
Hmm.
helping make sure mom's comfortable, but also, the birthing parent is working on with their body to do the dilating and everything like
Yeah.
that. So that, of course, takes time. But
Hmm.
when it's go time, it is go time. You know,
Hmm.
things happen so quickly. And so for you to have that adrenaline rush like near the end, especially if it's been a pretty long labor, you're
Oh
like,
my gosh.
oh, it's happening. Like, let's go. Yay. Woohoo. Like all these things,
Hmm.
but also there's also fear and worry and excitement and all the
Hmm.
things. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about one of your most memorable births. I have two kind of births that birth ideas that I want to talk about. So can you tell me like the most challenging birth that you've attended as a student so far?
Yeah. So I think the most challenging one was the I was a first time mom,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't have the support. Like she didn't have the father of the baby a part of
Mm-hmm.
her birth process, and I think we stayed at that birth for over 27 hours at the
Mm-hmm.
birth center. And I would say that was probably one of the most mentally, like physically toughest births I've been to, just because when you try all the things and you get just a little bit of progress, progress is progress.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing this person work so hard to want to have a, out of the hospital birth, it was mentally challenging being there because it was also my first time being at a birth for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I was at butter births where you come in and they're ready to give birth.
Right.
But it was draining. And then also when they're doing all the stuff, you just kind of like contemplate, are you being safe?
Mm-hmm.
Are the midwives being safe? Is the client safe? Like all of like
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you said, like your fears start coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Also as a student, I don't know a whole bunch of stuff. And at that time I was still like coming into my second year.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of things that I didn't know. But once that baby was born, it was a chubby baby too, so beautiful. It was worth it, and it was an understanding that all labors are different.
Mm-hmm.
But to see such a young, person all alone with only the support from the birth team, like I wanted to help her,
Yeah.
and we were in the room every 30 minutes, like supporting her, doing vitals, making sure baby was okay. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was gruesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say that the most challenging part of that birth was just the length of time it was, or was it because of like having fears around the process of what was going on, or was it more of um, more challenging because you were giving your all in all aspects, like emotionally and physically?
I think it was a compilation of all of it.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Giving your best and like also not sleeping
Mm-hmm.
when you're with a client and you're constantly making sure that they're safe and it's already you're going on 15 hours of no sleep. Like I
Mm-hmm.
have to ask myself, have I eaten? Have I drank? Am I taking care of myself?
Mm-hmm.
There were many times where like it's like 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm writing out some vitals and my head just falls. Like especially at that birth, there was many times where my midwife had to tell me to go to the back or find an empty room just to close my
Mm-hmm.
eyes for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when if baby comes soon, you're well rested. But I think that was also hard because it was my first introduction to a really long labor. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know it can go that long.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it can go longer.
Oh,
Longer
yeah.
than 27. I mean, you probably know that now.
Oh, yes. I
Yeah.
would say that was probably my longest,
Mm.
toughest, toughest birth. But
Yeah.
it was just the introduction to something that I've never experienced before. So I will always remember that.
Yeah. Do you feel like ever since that experience, you kind of go into each birth knowing that it could be just as long?
Yes, now, yes. When my husband asks me what time I'm going to be home,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even answer. I just look at them and say when the baby's out and everyone's safe.
Yeah. It's a good answer.
Yeah, and that's one of the times that I was like, "Oh yeah, like baby came, I'm going home." As soon as we were walking out of the birth center, another pregnant person was coming in to give birth. They were in
Mm,
labor and they were ready to go.
mm.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
That's when you're like, okay, let's turn around, put our bags back down, set up the room.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
when I was at Renton, my very first day, oh no, no, I'm sorry, not my first day. My first birth that I experienced there, I
Mm-hmm.
had three back-to-back births.
Mm. Yeah.
That was wild.
Sounds about right. Yeah, Renton was very, very busy. Very, very, very busy. And because, it was a location that was so loved by its community. Um,
Mhm.
and I was very sad to see the Puget Sound Birth Center Renton location go. I was really sad about that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a very, 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 very large shoe for the buyers of that organization to fill.
Mhm.
Yeah, so far it's been interesting to watch from a distance.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I'm excited that there is still something there for the community because the community
Mhm.
still needs a birth center, and but it's definitely different. Definitely
For
different.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like I it when I think about my days over at Renton, even though it was not a lot,
Mm-hmm.
like it was a lot of births. Like sometimes being out in a community doing home births, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
in the Puyallup, Tacoma area,
Mm-hmm.
we have privileges at like the birthing inn in Tacoma. And
Mm-hmm.
so we go there whenever clients are giving birth. But
Mm-hmm.
because there's not many midwives like a birth center has,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have as much clients just because I think there's just too much. There's too much like prenatals. It's not sustainable and not being able to provide individualized care to them. So
Right. Yeah, that's definitely something that, as a midwife who is practicing either solo or in a partnership, has to take into consideration, right? Which is,
mhm,
even though you want to serve all the people, do you have the time and energy to actually be able to do that while providing high quality care?
mhm.
And then, if you have a ton of people that are due around the same time, that's challenging too.
Oh my gosh.
That's inevitable that would happen.
Mhm,
But it's challenging. That's why I personally think that birth centers that have, or like midwives that partner with another to, well, like one or more and open up a birth center, I feel like that's ideal, so that it's
mhm.
just not one solo midwife doing all of the work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Can I just say, so coming from the birth center and having like you as the office manager and then receptionists and admin people,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I appreciate you so much because being out in the community and working with the solo midwives or working with the smaller practices, they don't have like receptionists, they don't have schedulers. They are literally on the phones like 24/7, like
Mm-hmm.
making sure they have appointments, checking in with their clients. If
Mm-hmm.
clients miss an appointment or if they need referrals or whatnot or consultations, like they are the one trick pony.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I admire them. I'm like, it makes me think of how I would work if I was going to be a community midwife like that. But when I
Mm-hmm.
also think of my time at Renton, like I never had to worry about this. Like
Yeah.
the office manager had it all. Like,
Mm. Yeah, there was definitely stuff that was, the job of the admin and the job of the midwife. And sometimes, they would flow over because if the admin isn't there and you're like, on call and you're there on the weekend or something and you need something done right away, of course, the midwives know how to do that and they did that.
hmm
But yeah, I 100% understand where you're coming from because when you are with a smaller practice, that means like you are a solo midwife doing one thing and you can only take so many clients per month. And then on top of, let's say you have 5 clients a month, right?
hmm
On top of those 5 clients, you have to get all of those clients ultrasounds. You have to do all of those clients labs. You have to do all of those clients prenatal visits and postpartum visits. And
hmm
that includes, like, if you have 5 clients that are due in that month, you still have clients that you're seeing postpartum from the previous month and clients that you
Yes.
will continue to see beyond that month because they're not due for
Yes.
another 4 or 5 months. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah. And all the billing stuff, which is like,
Oh my gosh, yes.
so
hmm
much. Yeah. So, man, midwives are amazing and they absolutely do not get paid enough. They do not get enough credit for all that they do. But I really feel like people that become midwives or out of hospital midwives in particular, they do it because they're called to it, not
Yeah.
necessarily because they want to be millionaires. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. I think the first day of school, like they asked us like why we wanted to be midwives, and a couple of us said, "Oh, because the babies." I
Mm-hmm.
don't do anything with the babies except their newborn exam
Mm-hmm.
because once the baby's born, you give them to their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're there for the support for the birthing person and their family for the experience of out of hospital birth. And like I was like, they asked us that. They're like, if you're here for the babies, you might want to rethink, what you're going into midwifery for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a calling for sure. And they still always check in with us at school, like, how are you feeling? Like, what's your forecast? Are you still loving what you're doing in the community? And
Mm-hmm.
even though we have those really, really tough births where it's mentally draining and physically draining, like, I don't know. I was talking to my midwife about this or my preceptor, and I'm like, it's just a different type of like reward when you
Mm-hmm.
when you see that family transition in their postpartum care and knowing
Mm-hmm.
how they went from finding out they were pregnant to going through all of the pregnancy symptoms and having, sometimes it's like Gucci, sometimes it's really good, and then sometimes they're like having a hard time
Mm-hmm.
coping with pregnancy, and then seeing them blossom afterwards. Oh my gosh, like it's a whole different person.
It really is. Yeah. My favorite experiences postpartum are when we have, a birthing person that is struggling and, really struggling to get through their own mental blocks during labor and
hmm
then those physical blocks during labor. And then they tell themselves, like, I can't do this. This is so hard. And then they have a baby and they look down at their baby and they're like, oh my God, like I did it. Oh my
hmm
God, I did it. Like that is such, it just like makes me emotional because it's such an awesome moment to observe and see and to realize that the person that thought they couldn't did.
hmm
And it's that moment of like realization that they are so powerful and strong and capable of doing things that they didn't think that they could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
they definitely get to the point where they say, I can't do it. And some of the births that I've been to, the clients hired uh, birth photographers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really interesting to see our expressions on those pictures.
Yeah.
And I can particularly say, oh, this is the time where they were like, they see us laughing and they're like, yeah, that's when they said they couldn't do it, or they wanted to go to the hospital, or they wanted drugs, like pain drugs, like give me something. And
Mm-hmm.
we're like, nope, nope. And
Mm-hmm.
we're, as mean as we feel like we are, we're like, no, you could do this. Like you are
Yeah.
pushing through. And when they're like, I can't do it, like you're already doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are already doing it and you're just that much closer to having your baby in your arms. And maybe
Right.
about 5 minutes later, they push that baby out.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's what it is. I love when those moments happen and then at the end they're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. I could do that again, you know?
Yeah. Oh, there have been a couple where they hated pregnancy and they were very honest, where
Mm-hmm.
they came in, they wanted to have about a 10-minute visit with us, and our visits go anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. And
Mm-hmm.
they're ready to just get out, like listen to baby, everything's fine, I just want to go. And then
Mm-hmm.
after they give birth, completely different person. They're very
Mm-hmm.
happy, they're very smiley, they just didn't like being pregnant, but it
Mm-hmm.
was worth it once that
Yeah.
baby was there.
Yeah, exactly. Ah, I love that. Okay, so since we're on the positive side of the spectrum, let's go ahead and talk about what birth sticks out to you the most as the most impactful birth that you've been to when it comes to let's say, what was the most empowering birth that you have been to and participated in?
Probably a VBAC.
Mm. Yeah, so
Yes,
VBAC is vaginal birth after cesarean for the listeners.
yes.
Tell me why.
It was funny because I actually did not meet this client in her prenatals at all. I just showed up to the birth.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went in, she was actually ready to give birth. They didn't have time to set up the birth pool. She
Mm.
was ready. She listened to
Mm-hmm.
her body, but this client had a really bad experience with doctors and the hospital just not giving consent and going straight into cesareans.
Mm.
Same old story. Um, but this was her third baby, first time out of the hospital, and she killed it. Like, we were there just to catch the baby. She did
Mm.
everything, the laboring, letting us know when she was ready, pushing the
Mm-hmm.
baby. It was really quick. And I think why this was so impactful is because it was my first VBAC. I didn't meet this client, and it wasn't until I came the next day for the 18 to 24-hour visit and I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to her and how it affected her.
Mm.
When I saw how proud she was and just the way she looked at her baby and the way she felt about herself,
Mm-hmm.
like it hit me really hard. Like, this is why you do these things. People
Mm-hmm.
are scared to have home births. People, even now, like I talk to some people, my friends and family, and they're like, I would never do a home birth, it's not safe. And
Mm-hmm.
teaching them about what is considered safe, what's consent, and what are your options of even being low risk.
Mm-hmm.
That VBAC was definitely one of the most impactful, just because the experience that this client had in the hospital, doctors are saying, nope, you just need a cesarean,
Mm.
and then proving them all wrong.
Yeah.
Listening to her body, like, oh, like, you're my hero.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I teared when I was talking to her. I was doing the um, metabolic screening for her baby while she's breastfeeding, and just seeing that glare in her eyes, like, I teared. I was so proud. And then also to feel honored to be a part of that, moment for them and that family.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Man, and that just goes to show that there are people out there that really, really trust their bodies and know
Mm-hmm.
what their bodies can do, while also knowing the risk, of course, because
Mm-hmm.
VBACs are, they can be dangerous depending on all kinds of parameters, like how soon you
Mm-hmm.
become pregnant and
Mm-hmm. Scar tissue.
exactly. Yeah. Scar tissue. And one of the biggest risks people talk about is that scar tissue rupturing, causing a uterine rupture during labor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But, there are ways for it to still be safe, and
Mm-hmm.
for that client to have confidence in themselves to be able to be like, I got this. And then the providers being comfortable enough with listening to their client and trusting that they know their own body and to just
Yeah.
go with the flow.
Yeah.
It sounds like she was very, very empowered by that birth, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also trusting the midwives and knowing
Mm-hmm.
what their experiences are and knowing that, hey, if this is not safe, then we're going to let you know. And
Mm-hmm.
looking for those signs and symptoms to prevent any, any bad things from happening. I think it was a really big team effort in making sure that was a successful and safe birth.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yay. I love that. I'm just like over here smiling because that's such a
I know, I
beautiful.
could see you. It's making me smile.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful story and such a beautiful experience to think about even from the outside. I love that. So
Mhm.
since we're over here smiling, what is one of the like funnest births you've been to, would you say?
A precipitous birth.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about
Yeah,
that. So precipitous birth
yeah,
means a baby comes within like under 3 hours. So
yes. So from the start of labor to when the person came to the birth center, I think they pushed for like 20 minutes when they got to the birth center. They were ready to rock and roll.
mm-hmm,
But that was probably the second birth. I had just finished a birth and we were
mm-hmm,
walking out of the birth center. And then this one came and this was her second baby. And as soon as I put my bag down, we were like throwing things everywhere to try to get her to get into the room and into the tub and ready to deliver.
mm,
But I think it was fun because after all of those longer labors and then coming in and seeing that, like she's ready to rock and roll and then baby's right then and there, like to get the birthing person's head wrapped around, I just had a baby. It was
mm-hmm,
unreal. Like they could not believe it that they just had a baby from the start of labor. And they actually had to kind of take a step back and we had to give them some time to process what just happened.
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, we have fun at every birth. We're always laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, like, my midwife has to tell us to rein it back in because we're making jokes with the clients, with their families, and it's kind of like a party. Obviously, we
Mm-hmm.
read the room and we match their energies, but there's just some clients where you really connect with and you're always laughing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. And I remember having many moments like that and just, cracking up. And then, a client will have a contraction and then you get quiet, you let them do their thing. And then they come out of their contraction, they're right back to where they were. So
Yeah.
that's always fun to see and experience. And I think one thing that, is really interesting is sometimes you don't know how long the party is going to be, right? Like what we
Hmm.
were talking about. And um, it's interesting to watch the fluctuation of the family and the birth team as that time goes on, because most of the time, if it starts out with like happiness and kind of like positive party like energy, it stays that
Hmm.
way consistently. And then
Hmm.
it reaches this really love filled space when baby's born. It's like
Hmm.
more than normal with what I think when I remember those. It's just like you create this connection with the family and the team at that point, and you're like, we did this together, but this birthing person just did an amazing job.
Hmm.
And it's just a big celebration. It's a birthday
Yeah.
party. So,
Yeah, no, it really is. There was also one client who they were together since like high school,
hmm.
and they're in their like mid 30s now,
Mm-hmm.
but she had prom, and it was probably like a 24-hour kind of thing that we were at the birth center for. But she and her husband were jokesters. Like once she got through a contraction, she was making jokes. And then
Mm.
we were giving things like labor tincture or oh my gosh, castor oil and lemon verbena shakes.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just like, oh, I drank in college. This is nothing. And it's when clients make jokes like that where it does make it really fun because we know they're hurting, we know they're tired, yet
Mm-hmm.
they're making light of the situation. But
Yeah.
we were already talking about, like, hey, you're coming to the end of the road where we're going to have to transfer you because we've been doing this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But in those last moments, she came in clutch and she pushed out a 9 pound baby.
Ooh.
And yes, I mean, they were also very tall. Like, I'm 5 feet, and
Mm-hmm.
they were like clearly over 6 feet. Like,
Nice. Yeah.
her husband was like monstrous compared to me. So it was really awesome. Like, when I see those birth pictures,
Mm-hmm.
I those are the ones where I know exactly what we were talking about
Mm.
and just how hard she was trying. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, I think that's great. And with PROM, which is premature rupture of membranes, it's an abbreviation for premature rupture of membranes,
Mhm.
that can be scary at times.
Yeah.
And then there are those things that you look for, just like when your water breaks or anybody's water breaks, or you do an AROM, which is an artificial rupture of membranes. Once the water is broken or released, you have those things you have to check off, right? Like,
Mhm.
what does it look
Fever,
like?
temperature. Yep.
Right, exactly. Like, what does it look like? What does it smell like? How you have to be consistent to watch for signs and symptoms of infection, which is what you were just mentioning, the fever, taking the birthing person's temperature, and just paying attention. So, like, even how lethargic they are, which could be really tricky when someone's in
Mhm.
labor. Because if they're tired, they're tired. But, like, are you like so tired, like you can't move your body, or are you so
Yeah.
tired? Um, Interesting. But I'm happy that was a positive story and it turned out well.
Yes, that was honestly when we're learning specific things in school and topics, it's
Mm-hmm.
like manifested in practice that the universe is just going to give you the opportunity to see what
Mm-hmm.
you're learning about. And I think that week we had like 3 prom clients.
Mm, yeah.
So we had like 3 labors of 24 plus hours, but they
Mm,
all had successful vaginal births. So it was worth it.
that's great. I think that's awesome. What is one of the funnest things that you do as a student?
Oh, one of the funnest things. I'm always fun though. um, I think as a student, it's being put on the spot in a prenatal visit
Mm-hmm.
to show your preceptor just how much you know.
Mm,
It, um, I mean, yeah, like it's interesting to know and like, did you learn something? I don't know if I did. You tell me.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just I guess like bonding with the clients.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes we go over 45 minutes just because we're talking about
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. Just connecting. Yeah.
And we're talkers too. So sometimes, especially if we have something in common, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that's great. Yeah, having something in common with a client is fun, and it puts you in a tricky spot because I have many a times just wanted to be friends with clients. Like,
Hmm.
is it weird for me to ask for your number as a friend after this, like after you have your baby, or like what?
Hmm.
um it's definitely tricky. You have to wear those hats because you're still human, but there's
Hmm.
that line between provider and client or professional and casual. So um, those are all fun things to experience as a student for sure.
Yeah, we definitely get a lot of clients while they're in our care asking for like, oh, what's your personal social media? And I'm like, I'm sorry that we can't mix that just yet. So as soon as they're out of our care, we get lots
Mm-hmm.
of requests to catch up, and I love seeing their family transition after because their
Mm-hmm.
babies do not look the same. They don't look
Right.
the same. And
Yeah.
just to see the growth,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's very unreal. So,
Yeah. It just goes to show that when you have those clients that you feel really connected with, you see them in the spotlight during pregnancy. So it's like what they look like and how they act and everything during pregnancy and labor. but they were a person before being pregnant. And so when you see them on social media postpartum years later, you're like, wow, it's so great to actually get to know you as a person outside of just being pregnant or worrying about the baby.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my classmates about this and just how I'm so thankful for birth photographers because when we are in births, it's such a sacred space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we do not take pictures. We have to take in the moment exactly
Mm-hmm.
how it is. And unless someone is there capturing it, then you just have to go off your memory.
Yep, that's true.
And so to see these captured and just to see a reminder of how intimate those spaces are, and
Mm-hmm.
then when you follow these clients like further, past postpartum, it's like I was there for a very intimate moment. Like we have a connection,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of golden for me.
Yeah. I love that too. Yeah. And the truth is a lot of those connections do fall, like
Hmm.
they look at you and support you and they're so happy to see you. But postpartum, a lot of people, they don't forget about you, but they're so they
Life moves
move on with
on.
their life. Yeah. life
Yeah.
life moves on. And it was such an amazing moment. Like I have many clients that I'm still connected with, but you
Hmm.
know, there's times when you connect with them and you're like, oh my God, tell me everything. Tell me about your life. And then there's times when it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? Like
Hmm.
there's a little bit of a difference there. But the connections that are real, they stay pretty strong, which is fun.
Yeah, and it's always nice to not hear from them for a while, and then you get a random picture of the baby,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, so and so starting kindergarten," and you're like, "Oh my gosh, you delivered that baby 5 years ago?"
Right.
So it's just even though we're there for a season of
Mm-hmm.
our client's life, we're there for a very intimate season that they will
Mm-hmm.
never forget you.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up the interview a little bit with talking about a few things.
Yeah.
What is a piece of advice that you would give to those that are wanting to become a student midwife?
Do your research before you get into it.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did not do, oh, I attempted to, but I was never given the opportunity to see what an on-call schedule is like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've never, I've never dealt with multiple clients. It was very new to me and it was a big adjustment. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you are wanting to be, if you can shadow or see what birth assisting is like, that will kind of get an introduction to what a midwife life is like. It was a
Mm-hmm.
little hard to adjust to family time with school, being in school full time, not able to work or
Mm-hmm.
provide any financial support to my family. Those are some big things that I had to learn on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can consider that and do like a shadow or do a birth assistant or even douulaing
Mm-hmm.
before, or be a doula before a midwife, being a midwife, I think those are like routes that'll let you know if you want to be, if this is really something you want to do. Because throughout my program, we've seen people leave the program because they realize it's not for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we definitely need more midwives in the community.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, it's a calling and it's not for the faint of heart. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say that midwives are constantly in a battle, like
mhm,
regardless of how long they've been around, how well they are as providers, how high the quality of the care they provide is. There's always a constant battle with people saying that out of hospital midwives or direct entry midwives or community or certified professional midwives are like less than a hospital
yeah.
because we get paid a lot less.
Oh my gosh.
We
Yeah.
also don't, have a giant support team behind us when it comes to
Hmm.
like the birth. There are usually anywhere from 2 to 4 people at a birth on your birth team as your provider team.
Yeah.
And a lot of people feel like that's not enough. And that's okay for people to feel that
Hmm.
way. But I would say there's just a big reminder out there that midwives that are out of hospital, they don't take high risk clients. And I think
Nope.
that's the biggest misconception is that midwives will just take on anybody and then all of this horrible stuff happens. Like, I'll say that out of hospital midwives definitely do their due diligence with making sure that the clients they are caring for are low risk.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, depending on the provider, there are some that walk a fine line, but that is up to the provider to decide. And it's all about informed decision making throughout the care with that client. So you inform the client, hey, X, Y, and Z is happening. Here are your options. And the client is leading the show. So, yeah.
That's what I love about what I'm learning in my practice is everything is about informed consent. And if I don't know what I'm talking about, then I need to go do some more research and make sure that I'm giving all the information so that our clients are comfortable making the decision they're doing. And if they don't want to do it, then we just give them the other options that are on the table. But it's really just up to them. And like you said, low risk. Like, what does that mean? It's every day we're finding out if our clients are low risk with every visit, with every concern that they have. We're constantly making sure that they are safe enough to be in our care for an out of hospital birth. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
But clients also have to hold accountability for themselves if they're not being honest. And they say they're low risk based on their symptoms or whatnot, and then they're not. That causes a lot more problems, not only for themselves, but just the midwifery community as well.
Right. Yeah. It's all about communication, just like any other relationship, you know, the communication and the trust. So yeah, communication, trust, and honesty.
Yeah. I really like that midwives do their consults, but basically the meet and greets to fill each other out and think of like, okay, I know this is what you want, but am I the right midwife for you?
Right.
Like, if we don't get good vibes on the first meeting, then I don't know if I'm the right one for you. So I like that aspect too. Like, midwives also have the opportunity to choose who they want for their clients based on that meeting.
Yeah, for sure. Because there are just, there are people out there that want to be in control of their birth 100%, but then they don't necessarily listen to the medical advice or clinical advice that's being given. And that puts the midwife at risk and makes them responsible for things that may go wrong based off the decision that the client is making. And that happens in hospitals too, 100%. So it happens wherever you are, but it's challenging for sure. It's a challenging thing to have to work through.
Definitely learning that in my practicum site. So it's growth.
Yeah, exactly. Growth, one step at a time. Yeah, so let's go ahead and end this with one question, which is, what is one resource that we can share with the listeners on your behalf?
Moz. They always have so much information for people who want to work with midwives. What are the differences of the community midwives versus nurse midwives? It also gives you the midwives in your areas too. Like, if you don't want to give birth in a hospital, where do I look to find a midwife?
Yeah.
And so I would give that as a resource. I mean, I use it a lot in school.
Perfect. Yeah. So Moz is the Midwives Association of Washington State. Yeah. And so I think that's super, super awesome. I will make sure to put that in the show notes. So yeah. Thank you so much, Jadrienne.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It was really good to catch up with you and talk to you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Interviewing Jadrienne for this episode was actually a lot of fun because it brought me back to my student days as a midwife, and it brought me back to the things that went through my mind as a green midwife, like a brand new student midwife when I didn't know anything, to when I did have that moment of kind of being put on the spot in a prenatal visit to see if I was actually learning things, and then also experiencing a four-handed catch myself, as well as catching two babies on my own as a student. So it was a lot of fun to relive those moments through these interviews with Jadrienne, and I know that Jadrienne is going to be an amazing midwife based off of how it all started with the love of the birth of her goddaughter/niece. Next week, we have the amazing Faisa Farole on the podcast, and she is talking about her journey of becoming a midwife. Faisa is the owner and co-founder of Global Midwifery Services as well as Global Perinatal Services, and there is so much going on with those organizations, and I can't wait for you to hear about them in next week's episode, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. Don't hesitate to share this with your family and friends. If you liked this episode, feel free to leave a review so my podcast can pop up for others and they can see and listen to it as well. If you have a birth story or experience you would want to share on the Birth As We Know It podcast, head over to KionaNessenbaum.com and fill out the guest request form. That is KionaNessenbaum.com. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Bye for now.